Hey, what's up everyone? So in the last episode, we were able to cover variables in JavaScript and we saw three ways in which we can be able to declare variables in JavaScript. We can use let, we can use var, and also we can use const. So which one should you use? Always make use of const, not unless you are sure that you want that data to change later on. That is when you make use of let. Just avoid var because that is the old way of doing things. Now, in this episode, I want us to cover data types in JavaScript, and a value in JavaScript is always of a certain type. For example, it can be a number, a string, a boolean, and so on. So we'll cover all the data types that exist in JavaScript, and JavaScript is usually considered as loosely typed programming language or dynamically typed programming language, and we'll see why that is so when we get started using an example that will be much easier to understand. So if you like the content in this particular episode, please remember to leave a thumbs up and also support my channel by subscribing. Now let's just dive right in. So let's take a look at data types in JavaScript. And in JavaScript, we usually have 8 data types, and 7 of the data types are known as primitive data types. So these 7 data types right here are known as primitive data types. The reason why they are known as primitive data types is because their values contain only a single thing. So that can be a number, it can be a string, it can be a boolean, undefined, null, big int, or symbol. But objects are considered as complex data types in JavaScript. They are complex data structures, and this is because they contain keyed collection of various data. So in a single object, you can contain any of the above data types. You can have a number, you can have a string, you can have a boolean, and the rest just in a single object, okay? But since objects are so special in JavaScript, we will be dedicating a special episode for objects so that we can explore them nicely. And most of JavaScript is made up of objects, and you can hear some people say that JavaScript is all about objects. Things like arrays and functions are considered as objects, and we will cover them later on in the course. So in this episode, let's just cover the primitive data types, and we won't cover symbols. Although symbol is a primitive data type, you'll only understand symbols once you understand objects. So once we cover objects, that is when we will cover symbols, okay? So in this particular episode, we'll cover these 6 data types. And let's just get started with number. So a number type represents both integers and floating point numbers. So you can have integers or you can have numbers with decimal points, okay? So let's see an example. We can say let age be equal to 20. Now this is a number, and we saw this example when we were covering variables. But now we can also use decimal points. So we can have let age be equal to 20.5. So these will also work out as number. And when we do a console.log of age, we should get 20.5 on our console. So right here I'll say console.log of age. Now when I save this, we should get right here 20.5. And there is a way that we can check the data type of a particular variable or a particular value using the type of operator or type of function. So right here we can say type of console.log type of space age. Now this will output the data type of age. So when I save this, you'll get number. So cool. So in numbers, we have integers and floating point numbers. Now we can be able to perform mathematical operations in numbers, and the most common ones are multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So right here, let's just output the age, which is 20.5, and then right here we can perform mathematical operation. For example, we can do multiplication. 20.5 times 2, that will be about, I think, 41. So there we go. You can divide it. So we can divide by 2. So that will give us 10.25. So 10.25, we can add, that will be 22.5. We can subtract, that will be 18.5. So as you can see, we can perform mathematical operations when it comes to numbers. Numbers also contain special numeric values like infinity, negative infinity, and none. So when can we get infinity? So if we divide 20.5 by 0, this should be infinity. And when I save this, you see, we get infinity. For negative infinity, when we add a negative right here and save, we get negative infinity. And then we will get none when we perform an invalid calculation. So for example, when we divide negative 20.5 by a string. So when we divide it by a string, so this is known as a string, and we'll be taking a look at it here. Now when we divide this by a string and save, we get none, and this means not a number, and this is a value which is classified as a number. So now we know that age has a value of none, and when we do a type of age, we should get number. So type of age, we say that this is a number. So infinity, negative infinity, and none are also under numbers. Okay, so yeah, that is it for now about numbers. There are methods that we can use when working with numbers, but for now we won't cover them. We will dedicate a special episode for that. Okay, for now this is good enough to get started with. So now let's take a look at strings. So in JavaScript, a string must be surrounded by quotes. So that can be double quotes, can be single quotes, or we can make use of backticks. So double quotes and single quotes are essentially the same, but backticks are special. And let's take a look at an example. So right here, let's have a variable let first name be equal to Charles. So right here, I have made use of double quotes, the same we did here. So now this is considered as a string data type in JavaScript. So if I come right here and say console.log of, we say type of first name. And when we save this, we are getting a string. Awesome. So now we can also make use of single quotes. And this is essentially the same, but when I save this file, I'm using a code formatter called Prettier. It will auto format my code and it will include double quotes because it is the same. So when I save, it just auto formats, but you can definitely use single quotes. Okay, and then we have backticks. Backticks look like this, and it's a symbol just before your one on the keyboard. Now backticks are a bit special because we can use them to write expressions, and also we can use them to do what we call concatenation. So concatenation is joining the strings together. Okay, so we can join strings together using backticks. Okay, so let me show you an example. Right here I have let full names be equal to, so right here I can make use of backtick. So a backtick like that, a backtick like that. Now right here I'll have the first name. Let me use this as the first name. So to read this value of our first name, we can use a $sign, and then we use curly brackets like that. And then right here, we just pass our first name. And now we have read this value right here of our first name. And then for the second name, I can just include a space. And in this case, I'll just use Chaoo as an example. And then right here, let's log full names to the console. So I'll include full names and save. Now we should get Charles Chaoo. So we have joined the first name here and Chaoo together, and now they are appearing as a single name like these. So they are separated by a space. So how can you join strings when you have double quotes or single quotes? So if you have double quotes or single quotes, you can use a plus sign to join the names. So let me remove this, and then right here I remove this. Let's have this. Okay, so now right here I want us to join Charles with another name. Okay, so how we can do that? We can have Chaoo right here, maybe Chaoo, and then right here we join first name with a plus. So I can say plus first name. Now when I save this, we should have Chaoo Charles on the console, but we don't have a space. Now to include a space, we also need to add double quotes and a space, and then right here we include a plus. So we are joining three things. We are joining this name, we are joining a space, and then we are joining our first name. So we are reading this value. Now when I save, we have Chaoo Charles on the output. So that is how we can basically like work with string. We can use double quotes, we can use single quotes, or we can use backticks. And as you have seen, backticks are a bit special, and as we proceed on with the course, we will be working more with them. Now, again, there are methods and properties to work with strings, e.g. to make a string uppercase, lowercase, to access a specific character, and we will dedicate a special episode for those methods and properties. So for now, this is good enough to get started with, okay? Now let's take a look at Boolean. So in Boolean, we just have two values, that is true or false. And we use booleans to essentially say yes or no. It's like switching on and off a switch. An example in which we can make use of boolean is when we say something like const user is admin, and then we set this one to true. So when we do something like this means that this specific user is actually an admin, okay? And then when we set this to false, like that, we mean that this user is not an admin, so they won't have maybe special access at special places. So boolean is just true or false. We use it for comparison, and we use it to just say yes or no. Okay, so right here, if we console.log type of user is admin, console.log, we say type of user is admin, then we should get boolean on the console. So that is of type boolean when it is true or false. So that is all about boolean, no much that need to be said. Now right here we have a special data type called undefined, and undefined means that a specific variable have been declared but it has not been assigned a value. So an example, we can say let car, just like that. We have declared it, but we have not given it a value. Now, when we come here and say console.log, and then we say type of car, we should get undefined on the console. So when I save that, you see, we are getting undefined. So this is a special value which will be assigned by the JavaScript engine automatically when we declare a variable like this, but we don't give it a value, okay? So when we give this a value, let's give it a value of string hello. I save. Now look, this changes to string. It's no longer undefined. Now it is defined. Now some people confuse between undefined and not defined, and those are two different things. So when I comment out this one, we haven't declared variable car. Now when I try to log car to the console like this, we should get an error. So when I save, you see, car is not defined at all, like it is not defined, okay? So there is a difference between not defined and undefined. In undefined, the variable have been declared, but it hasn't been given a value. So when I return this and just we log car to the console, I will save that, we get undefined, when we say type of char, we get undefined. So undefined is both a data type and a value, okay? And then right here we have another special data type which is similar to undefined called null. Now null simply means that that variable has no value or it has an empty value. And it is a similar thing with undefined, only that undefined is given automatically by our JavaScript engine. Although we can like define it like this, but this is not like recommended, okay? So don't do this. So if you want to say that a particular variable has no value, make use of null, okay? So right here, char be equal to null. So since we have already declared it here, we can reuse it here. So char is null. Now this means that char has no value. It has not like been given a value. It has an empty value, okay? So this is the use of null. Most of the cases you won't use it, but sometimes you may use it, okay? So make use of null instead of undefined, okay? And now right here you'll see a weird behavior because null is supposed to be both a data type and also a value. But when we say console.log of when we say type of char, right here you'll see that we will get an object. So when I save, type of char is object. So JavaScript considers null as object, but null it is not an object, okay? Like this is an error that was made when the language was being created. Null it's not an object because objects are considered as reference data types, but null is a primitive data type, okay? So when you do type of char and you get an object, know that this is an error in JavaScript. It is supposed to give us null right here. So yeah, take note of that. Don't fall for this, okay? And then right here we have big int, okay? Now, big int is used to represent integer values that are larger than this particular number. So I'll just paste it out, this number, okay? So big int represent integer values that are big than this one. So let's see. Right here we can say const large number be equal to this number right here. Now we can log this number to the console.log of large number. Now when I save this, we get this number to the console. But when we include a number that is big than this one, then our number data type, it will misrepresent it, okay? It won't represent it correctly. So right here, when we include 8 and save, now look, this has kind of been rounded off or something. So right here, when we include more and save, look, so this is not correctly representing our large number. And that is where big int comes in. And this is a recent addition in JavaScript. Rarely you'll make use of big int. It is rarely used. It is used in fields like cryptography, but it's good to know that they exist, okay? So now how do we make use of big int to represent this large number? It's very easy. We just include an n at the end. So when you see a big number with an n at the end, that means that that number is of type big int. So when I save this, now this number is correctly being represented as we have it here. And when we say type of large number, we should get big int on the console. So when we say type of large number and save, we get big int. So now this is no longer considered as number, it is considered as big int. But when we remove this n, now it is considered as number. But as we have seen, when we make use of number, we don't get the correct representation of our data. And that is why big int was introduced to work in systems that are using these large numbers. But for you, you will rarely use this big int, okay? So yeah, that is it for the primitive data types. For symbol, we will take a look at it once we cover objects, okay? But for now, we have taken a look at big int, null, undefined, and then we have boolean, string, and number. Most of the time, you'll be making use of number, string, boolean, and then sometimes you'll make use of null, but rarely you'll make use of big int, and also undefined, you'll not make use of it. You'll just be seeing errors from the JavaScript engine telling you that you are trying to make use of this value, but you didn't define it. So these leave it to JavaScript engine. Don't make use of it, okay? So this is it for this particular episode, but I want to cover one last thing, and this is important. I told you that JavaScript is loosely typed or dynamically typed programming language. So once we declare, let's say, our first name like this, let first name be Charles, and we used a string. So we can redefine our first name. We can reassign it to a different value of different data type. So amazingly, we can say first name is equals to 78. So when I save this, we won't get an error. We'll just get Chaoo 78. But in many programming languages like Ruby, they'll throw an error to you. Like that, they'll throw an error to you because you're not supposed to like change the type. And this has advantages and disadvantages. So you rarely like run into type errors when working with JavaScript, but sometimes it can cause serious issues when you are working on production level application and you mistype your types. So that is why we have this language called Typescript. It is built on top of JavaScript to make JavaScript to be strict on types, such that when you give your first name a string like this, then you cannot give it a number. You can only give it a string again, okay? But in this case, we can change this to anything that we want. We can change it to true. When we save that, we'll see Chaoo true. We can give it to null. When we save this, you'll see Chaoo null. So JavaScript is not strict on types, and that is why it's known as loosely typed programming language or dynamically typed programming language. So that has advantages and disadvantages. But despite that, JavaScript is so amazing and it has been used in a lot of applications online. So that is it for this episode, and I really hope that it was helpful. Did you enjoy the content in this video? Please remember to leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and also you can join this channel's Discord server, and I'll leave a link at the description section below. Please check it out and join the Discord server, okay? So I'll see you in the next one.